In this chapter, chapter number 19, which is titled Flora Ackroyd, we will be seeing about this suspicion that has been grown against Flora. But what we are seeing here is that there is this constant portrayal of chapter names according to the suspects. Okay, depending on the suspect's name, what we find? We find that these chapters, these characters are being in the list of suspects. They are in the list of suspects, and in the chapters named after them, what we see? We see that the suspicion that is against them, or the suspicion against them is erased, or what we find here is that the suspicion is increased. Okay, or rather a mystery is being tried to solve. Okay, they are trying to solve the mystery, but what we find here is that some things are still unknown to them, and that is leading them to not know what the what actually had happened. Or what we can also say, that it is the nature of mystery novels. It is the nature of mystery novels where we get to know the character, or where we get to know the character who murdered. Okay, or what had happened in previous sections during the murder, especially in the very last chapter or the second last chapter. Okay, that is the plot, or that is the way the mystery novel goes. So what we see, there is this solution, but within this solution we find that there is a constant portrayal of mystery which is within the grasp of the detective Poirot. Okay, but that is not being revealed to the readers or to anyone else in the story. Okay, যে কিছু কিছু জিনিস হচ্ছে পয়রট করছে, সে হয়তো সলভও করে ফেলছে কিছু কিছু জিনিস, সেইগুলোকে বুঝতে পেরে যাচ্ছে, কিন্তু সেইগুলো কেন করছে, কিসের জন্য করছে, সেইটা কিন্তু না হচ্ছে রিডার্সরা বুঝতে পারছে, না অন্য যে ক্যারেক্টার্সগুলো ওইখানে রয়েছে তারা বুঝতে পারছে। Clear? So chapter 19, in chapter 19 what we see that the following morning Dr. Shepherd finishes his work and finds that Inspector Ranglan is waiting outside his home. Okay, and what we have seen here is that the theory of Ranglan had always been completely opposite to Poirot, right? So and what we feel here is that there is something that needs to be confirmed, because what we see that Charles Kent has given an alibi, or what we see here is that he has said that he was in the salon, okay, during that time. So proof, witness is already present at hand, and what we find here is that is saving Charles Kent. Clear? So Inspector Ranglan comes along, who has been waiting for Dr. Shepherd, and he says that Charles Kent saying was right, where Ranglan confirms that Charles Kent was indeed at the salon. Okay, the barmaid at the Dog and Whistle is the name of the bar, and the barmaid over there, whose name is Sally Jones, remembers that he was remembers him perfectly. He was there, and what we see here is that the barmaid also remembers that he had a lot of money. Okay, suggesting that he was the one who stole the 40 pounds from the drawer. Okay, so this might be the possibility that these 40 pounds were actually stolen by Kent. But what we see here is that, however, Kent refuses to say what he did at Farnley. Okay, first of all, what we see, he had refused that he was near Farnley Park. Rather, after investigation, what we find, rather after the questions or interrogation by not Dr. Shepherd, by Poirot, what we find that he is saying that he was in the summer house when the quill was discovered. But what we see here is that Kent refuses to say what he was up to at Farnley Park. Okay, to this, following this, what we see that Inspector Ranglan what is also mentioning that Poirot has a nephew who is of his crumpet. Okay, something that Caroline has told Shepherd recently. Okay, so but even if Poirot, like his nephew, is a bit barmy, Ranglan admits that Poirot gave him a good tip regarding the dagger, about the handprint. Okay, so fingerprint, that is. So what we find here is that another story or another information is being brought around, okay, about Poirot's nephew and everything. But what we will really focus on here is that the main storyline where Charles Kent has actually helped in moving the Poirot's investigation further. But what we see here is that he could not have been the killer. Okay, this section also includes similarly aside kind of thing where different information is being given over here. The fact of it is that Poirot has a mentally ill nephew, that is where it says that of his crumpet, that is who is not in his senses. Okay, so what we find here is that this information is actually kind of a thing where the readers might digress from this point. Okay, they might find a different person to judge or suspect, but we will focus on the right things right from now. So what we find here is that this this information of the mentally ill nephew of Poirot is actually considered in the book, but Ranglan admits that he respects Poirot, okay, because of his observation, because of his observation about how he is investigating the case. So what we find here is that this secret is not really of any help. Okay, so Ranglan and Dr. Shepherd after that visit Poirot, and Poirot listens very carefully and very patiently to Ranglan's news. He tells the inspector not to release Charles Kent as yet. Okay, so he tells Ranglan that he may have had something to do with this murder. Okay, he might be in some way connected with the murder. He might not have murdered the person, but there might be a possibility that he is in some way connected. Okay, so he is asking the inspector not to let him go. Clear? So Poirot also suggests that Flora may have been one who stole the money from Roger's desk. Okay, so why he is saying so? why he is saying so and why he is doing that is not clearly explained. I will read the section over here. That is just a question. It depends on what she was doing there, does it not? So they are talking about Miss Ackroyd, Flora Ackroyd. Okay, so you think she has been up to her uncle's bedroom? Well, why not? Why should she lie about it? Okay, so এখানটা হচ্ছে কথা বলছে যে it depends on what she was doing, does it not? So as we all know that Flora was the supposedly last one who visited her uncle, and now Poirot is questioning the situation or questioning the reason behind her visibility over there. Okay, her visibility in that place. Clear? Or her presence in that place. What is the reason behind it? Clear? So Shepherd is saying, you mean money? Hang it all, you don't suggest that it was Miss Ackroyd who took the 40 pounds. So he is being pressurized, or he is being asked very ardently, where they feel that Poirot is suggesting that it was Miss Ackroyd who has stolen the money, that is Flora Ackroyd who has stolen the money. But Poirot says on return that I suggest nothing, but I will remind you this. Life was not very easy for that mother and daughter. There were bills, there was constant trouble over small sums of money. So, as I was talking in previous lectures also on the financial ground, on the financial reason or the financial motive behind the murder, what we see here is that Poirot is not nullifying the case of this mother and daughter not having any part in the murder, or stealing, or anything which is linked with this house, any crime that is linked with this house. So what Poirot is actually doing, Poirot is actually keeping the options open. Okay, Poirot then suggests this, that Miss Ackroyd might have stolen, but he is not clearly saying that, because he says that I suggest nothing. But what he is actually doing, he is actually keeping the options open. Okay, when she and Parker rehearsed their action, he is saying that when she and Parker rehearsed their actions, Poirot discovered that Parker only saw Flora with her hand on the door. He never actually saw her coming out of the study. Okay, perhaps she was coming down from the Rogers room and pretended to be coming from the study to hide the fact that she had been upstairs looking for money. Clear? So there has been a robbery, and her one idea is to stick to her story. Okay, she learns that her uncle is dead. She is panic stricken, and she is bound to stick to her story, and she is trying to keep it simple and keep it hidden. Okay, because there might be a possibility that she has seen this person, she has seen Roger dead already when she has gone to steal the money. Clear? So what we see here is that the actual rehearsing or the actual test that he talked about, that Poirot talked about, of taking on Parker, was not only the test of Parker alone. Okay, he involved Flora in order to test her also. Okay, both Parker and Flora was tested with the same test. Clear? So what we find here is that this section is being projected as a possibility, where we see that this section is being projected here in such a way where this presentation is such that both the people, both Flora and this Parker was acting, and what we find that such situation is coming out of hand. Such situation was coming out of hand, where we find that Flora might have found the murderer or found Roger Ackroyd murdered when she was going to steal. Clear? So perhaps there is this situation. Clear? And what we see here is that this situation or this telling makes the readers learn the real reason behind Poirot asking Parker and Flora to recreate the situation. Okay, so recreate the crime scene when they have seen in the actual thing. He actually deceived Flora into revealing that she had lied about her alibi. Okay, that therefore it follows that Flora is the thief and made up the story about wishing her uncle good night to hiding the truth. Clear? So what we find here is that this person is in such way, this person that is detective Poirot is so shrewd. He can take information out of any person through that person only. বুঝতে পারছিস? সে কি করলো, পার্কারের নামে টেস্ট করালো, অন্য একটা কিছু টেস্ট করাবে বলে, দিয়ে টেস্ট তো করালো অন্য কিছুরই, প্লাস হচ্ছে সে কি করলো, সে টেস্টটা করলো ফ্লোরার উপরেও। ঠিক আছে? সে কি বলছে? সে বলছে যে এই যে ফ্লোরা, সেই ফ্লোরা হচ্ছে এখানটায় রয়েছে, ফ্লোরার যে ফ্লোরা যখন আসছিল তখন সে কিন্তু অ্যাকচুয়ালি ঘরের মধ্যে ছিল না। ঠিক আছে? ফ্লোরাকে দেখেছে যখন পার্কারের সাথে ফ্লোরার রিহার্সাল হচ্ছিল বা রিএনঅ্যাক্ট করছিল ক্রাইম সিনটা। পার্কার হচ্ছে ফ্লোরাকে দেখেছে, তার হাত হচ্ছে ডোর হ্যান্ডেলে ছিল, ঠিক আছে, দরজার উপর ছিল। সে কিন্তু কখনোই হচ্ছে তাকে রুম থেকে বা স্টাডি রুম থেকে হচ্ছে বেরিয়ে আসতে দেখেনি। ঠিক আছে? মেবি দেয়ার ইজ দিস পসিবিলিটি দ্যাট সে হচ্ছে রজারের রুম থেকে বেরিয়ে আসছিল। ঠিক আছে? আর সে অ্যাক্টিং করেছিল যে সে অ্যাকচুয়ালি স্টাডি থেকে বেরিয়ে আসছে, যেখানটায় রজার মার্ডার্ড হয়েছে। ঠিক আছে? তখন তো জানতো না মার্ডার্ড হয়েছে, রাইট? সো সে কি অ্যাক্টিং করেছিল, সে হচ্ছে প্রেজেন্ট করেছিল যে সে হচ্ছে তার আঙ্কেলকে গুড নাইট বলতে এসছে। বাট দেয়ার ইজ আ হাই পসিবিলিটি, or what Poirot is saying, that there might be a possibility where Flora was actually coming from this place, coming from the room after stealing the 40 pounds. Clear? So Inspector Wrangler and the other two, that is Dr. Shepherd and Poirot, they both all the three decide to speak to Flora, okay, about what had happened on that very instance. What we see here is that at Fernley they find Flora with Major Hector Blunt. Okay, Flora was asking Blunt to stay for the questioning. But what we see here is that Ranglan asks her behavior about her behavior on Friday night. Okay, and Poirot asks, "You took the money, did you not?" So he is directly charging him. Okay, he is directly charging Flora of stealing the money. Flora, after facing the question, though Major Blunt sharply says that the money, there was this silence which lasted at least a minute. Then Flora drew herself up and spoke. Poirot is right. I took that money. I stole. I am a thief. Yes, a common vulgar little thief. Now you know. I am glad it has come out. So what we find here is that it has been a nightmare these last few days. So what we find here is that the very important line that you people are hiding something, each one of you is hiding something, is now coming true, that Flora was also hiding. So this shows the genius. This shows the genius of the detective, where we find that he has already sensed that everyone was hiding something, and this comes true where Flora admits that she was the one who stole, because she has been desperate for money for years. Okay, and as she had stolen the money, and following that her uncle was found murdered, it was this sure possibility of her getting involved in the murder. There was this possibility of she turning out to be the murderer, right? But for covering that up, she actually made a different story. Okay, so she says that Roger was always stingy with her and Ralph and everything. Blunt mutters, "I see, always Ralph." And Flora insists, "You don't understand." Flora, saying that, rushes out. So what we see here is that Flora is admitting that she took the money. She also admits that she had resented her uncle's stinginess and the controlling behavior, and what we feel here is that she might have such a grudge against her uncle that she may have a motive for killing her uncle. Okay, but the question still remains whether she had murdered her or her uncle still remains. Okay, so what we find here is that when Flora is admitting about stealing, this scene reconfirms that Blunt is actually attracted to Flora, because the line I read just now, that Blunt says, "I see, always Ralph." Okay, so he is jealous. Blunt is jealous about Flora being associated with Ralph and everything. So what we find over here, that Blunt's attraction towards Flora has actually led him to feel bitter about Ralph. Okay, and this sentence or this dialogue is actually projection of the hatred. Okay, following that, Major Blunt tells Ranglan that Roger gave him the 40 pounds and that Flora never touched it, and he is prepared to say as much before the judge. So what we might find here is that Major Blunt is truly or ardently in love with Flora, and there is this possibility that he is now actually trying to save Flora. Okay, what we find here is that this section is being projected where he is prepared to take the blame on himself, and Poirot tells Blunt that he is not fooled. Blunt is actually protecting Flora. Okay, so what I see here is that Flora is being protected by Blunt, and Blunt clearly loves Flora. But Poirot suggests that he should tell her this and not get carried away by Blunt's story, because he has a whole story, whole mystery to be solving. So he has no intention in getting into all this kind of new kind of stories which are emotionally dependent. Okay, so Poirot says that Flora only agreed to marry Ralph to please Roger Ackroyd, because Roger was always cringy, always controlling, and she was always willing to escape from the current life. Okay, she never loved him, she was never in love with him, but as she stole the money and the owners or the blame was falling on this person, falling on Ralph Patten, she felt the guilt, and that led her to go to the detective in order to find the real case, who the murderer is. Okay, in return, what we see that Blunt is saying, or if I quote, he says that you are a sound fellow. He walks out to find Flora. So that this scene is actually presenting Poirot that Poirot does not just play the part of a detective whose job is to solve a crime and move on. What we see here is that Poirot's difference from other detective is that he also acts as an advisor, okay, in all sorts of matter. For Major Blunt, who little surprisingly takes Poirot's advice without any question about the intention or the psychological construct of Flora, where Poirot says that Flora had never been in love with Ralph Patten, and marrying Ralph was the only option left to Flora, that is, in order to escape this position. Okay, so Poirot's advice is being taken by Blunt, and she is being followed, or Blunt goes out to search for him. For an instance, what we see that Poirot is a detective, but what we see, if we see that more generally, he is a student or nurturer of human nature. He knows how people react. He knows how people actually enhances in solving the case, or he enhances or delves into the psychological construct of the people to solve the case. Okay, so Blunt's awkward courting of Flora also provides some comic relief in the novel, but what we find here is that this story is being presented in such a way where the psychological construct, or the analyzing of the psychological construct, or The detective's ability to understand the psychology of the people has actually helped him in solving the case. Okay, when he says that do not conceal it. Okay, so Hercule Poirot is saying, I will be reading the paragraph. He says, "You think that she loves Captain Ralph Patten, but I, Hercule Poirot, tell you that is not so. Mademoiselle Flora accepted Captain Patten to please her uncle, and because she saw in the marriage a way of escape from a life here which was becoming frankly insupportable to her. She liked him, and what we see, and there was much sympathy and understanding between them. What we see here is that between them, but love, no, it is not Captain Patten Mademoiselle Flora loves." So, as we said just now, that the thing that we have suggested or hinted at, where this person Major Blunt, the way he was talking with Flora, we, from the very first instance, we gathered that there is something between them. Okay, there is some kind of attraction between them, and this is now revealed in this chapter 19. So as I was telling the story, as I was telling in the description, or before the class started, what I was saying here is that every chapter which is named after certain characters, right, that chapter is actually solving the mystery surrounding that person. Okay, either their secret is being revealed, that is the main thing, and another thing that is happening over here is that the character are removed from the suspect list, and another thing that we find here is that we are constantly moving towards solving the case, because we are finding the missing jigsaw puzzle pieces in solving the mystery. So now what we have the stolen money, or the person who have stolen the money, right? Because we at the very beginning might have thought that the person who has stolen might be the murderer. There was this possibility, right? But this possibility is being nullified at this very instance, because she has stolen from actually Roger's room, and what we find here is that he was present, that is, Roger was present in the study. Flora had stolen from Roger's room, whereas Roger was found murdered in the study. And through the investigation that, or through the test that Poirot did on Parker, we find that it was also on Flora. And what we find that Flora unintentionally gave away the secret that she was hiding. What is that? She never actually never actually came here, never actually was present in the room study, or she has not seen this person, this her uncle, that is, in the study alive. So what it is bringing it down, তোরা সেটা বুঝতে পারলি না বা কোনো ভাবিসনি, the thing that is bringing in is that the time of the murder, which was supposed to be around 9:45, or 9:45 was the time when Flora had seen her uncle alive, is now coming down, right? The time is now reduced. Okay, so what we find here is that the murder there is this possibility that the murder had happened quite before that time. And I had said in previous lecture also that in solving the murder mystery, the time of the murder is very important, because we need to find out who all were there around that time. Clear? তাহলে এই যে ফ্লোরা যে হচ্ছে তার আঙ্কেলকে দেখেনি, অ্যাকচুয়ালি স্টাডির বাইরে দাঁড়িয়েছিল, ডোর হ্যান্ডেলে দাঁড়িয়েছিল। পার্কার কিন্তু তাহলে ফ্লোরাকে রুমে ঢুকতে দেখেনি, আর ফ্লোরাও স্বীকার করলো যে সে আঙ্কেলকে হচ্ছে দেখেনি। ঠিক আছে, তাহলে এটা তো এরকম পসিবিলিটি হতেই পারে যে আঙ্কেল যে হচ্ছে রজার অ্যাক্রয়েড, তাকে যে বলা হচ্ছে 945-এ হচ্ছে লাশ দেখা গেছে জীবিত অবস্থায়, সেটা তো পসিবিলিটি হতেই পারে দ্যাট হি হ্যাড বিন মার্ডার্ড বিফোর দ্যাট, রাইট? সো অ্যানাদার পসিবিলিটি ইজ ওপেন্ড আপ ইন দিস স্টোরি। সো মার্ডার মিস্ট্রি এরকমই না যে যত হচ্ছে হবে সব সলভ হতে হতে যাবে, বাট অ্যাকচুয়ালি ইট ইজ সলভিং, but it is actually also creating a mystery also. Okay, it is creating a mystery, and at the same time it is showing that the solution is also at hand by eliminating the suspects. যারা সাসপেক্ট তাদেরকে এক এক করে এলিমিনেট করে দিচ্ছে, মেরে দিচ্ছে না, এলিমিনেট মানে মেরে দিচ্ছে না, তাদেরকে সাসপেক্ট লিস্ট থেকে সরিয়ে দিচ্ছে। And what we find that we are moving towards the solution by presenting the actual things that might have happened, or going towards the actual thing that might have happened, what we might not know, we don't know actually. Okay, we knew that the murder was around 9:45 or after that or around that time, but as we find that Flora had not seen Roger at that time, there is this high possibility that the murder had happened before that. Understood? So this chapter ends over here. We will continue in the next class.